The call came exactly at 2:00 a.m., and I understood that my quiet retirement had come to an end even before I picked up the phone. Dr. Hold, this is Director Hayes from the GODDARD Space Flight Center. We need you. I sat in my cramped apartment watching the rain draw streaks on the window glass. 6 months had passed since I left the Artemis orbital station. 6 months of trying to forget what I saw THERE in the void, that feeling as if space was looking back at you. I don't care, Director. Find someone else. KIRN, listen to me carefully. Her voice took on that steel quality I remembered from pre-flight briefing. Something is affecting the moon's orbit, something we can't explain. And your name is the only one that KEPS coming up in OUR. Consultation FILES. I rubbed MYEYES, feeling the familiar weight of insomnia. Orbital mechanics isn't exactly a rare specialization. It's not about mechanics, it's about anomalies. Gravitational signatures that shouldn't exist, patterns that repeat every 19.3 days with the precision of a clock mechanism. This number hit me like icy water. During the last week on Artemis, I recorded dozens of minor sensor malfunctions that followed this exact interval, equipment failure. They were called calibration, ERRORS back then. Are you saying those readings were real? Pack your things, KIRAN. We're sending a car. 2 hours later I stood in a sterile briefing room, ATGODDARD, surrounded by monitors, displaying gravitational field data. That made my stomach drop. The moon hung there in the digital image, but beside it hung something else, a shadow, a mathematical ghost that pulled and tugged at our ancient satellite with invisible fingers. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the center's chief astrophysicist, pointed to the holographic display. Our new AI-based modeling systems discovered this 3 weeks ago, a secondary mass almost exactly matching the moon's density profile. Following the same orbital trajectory, I leaned closer, studying the trajectory. LINES. You mean IT's chasing more than that? SHE manipulated the display, showing me decades of archival data. It's been there the whole time. We just didn't have enough computational power to see it clearly. But now the picture has shifted, revealing 2 distinct gravitational signatures. The moon known for millennia, and something else, something that warps space-time, occupying the exact same position that should be empty. It's invisible to any spectrum we've tried. VSQZ continued. No electromagnetic radiation, no particle reflection, no thermal signature, but gravitationally it's absolutely real. I studied the data. STREMS, feeling that old familiar chill creeping up my spine, the same feeling I had during those last SHIFTs on Artemis, when the instruments whispered about impossible readings and the void seemed to press against the station hull with patient, deliberate pressure. What do you need from me? Director HAYS stepped forward. Her face was grim. We're assembling a team. Project Reverse Reflection. 4 specialists for a deep space reconnaissance mission. We need someone with your telemetry experience to help us understand what we're dealing with. The other 3 are Dr. MARCUS SLOAN, radiation engineer from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, brilliant mind but prone to seeing problems as PUZZLES rather than THRATS. Cassandra RENNER, our linguistics specialist. If we encounter any form of communication, she'll decipher it and Commander Jake Monro, former military pilot with more spacewalk hours than anyone else alive. I nodded slowly. Something about the mission name troubled me. Reverse reflection, an unusual name for a NASA operation. Hayes exchanged GLANCES with VASQEZ. The name reflects OUR primary. Hypothesis. We believe we're dealing with some form of reflection or echo. A gravitational mirror, if you will. What exactly? That's what we're going to find out. The next week blurred into a cascade of briefings, simulations, and equipment checks. Our ship, the Halcyon Aere, represented cutting-edge propulsion technology, designed for extended operations in the Earth-Moon system. But as I familiarized myself with its systems, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were preparing for something far beyond ordinary reconnaissance. Sloan turned out to be exactly as described, brilliant and methodical. He treated our mysterious second moon as an elegant equation waiting to be solved. During our first team meeting, he spread radiation detection schematics across the conference table like a card shark dealing a winning hand. If this thing exists in our spacetime but remains invisible, it's operating under physics we don't fully understand, he said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. MY instruments will tell us if it's radiating in spectrums we haven't considered. Cassandra Aere was harder to read. She spent most of our meetings quietly, reviewing linguistic databases, preparing for the possibility of first contact. When she did speak, her words carried weight, as if she'd considered every angle before opening her mouth. Has anyone considered the possibility that invisibility might be deliberate? She asked during one particularly long briefing. If something wanted to observe without being observed, gravitational camouflage would be almost perfect. Commander Monro brought military precision to everything he touched. A former Air Force officer, with a service record that HAYS referred to in careful euphemisms. He approached our preparation with systematic thoroughness of someone who'd learned to expect the worst possible outcomes. In my experience, he told me in a private moment, when something doesn't yield to simple explanations, it's usually because someone doesn't want it explained. Stay sharp up there, Doc. As launch day approached, I found myself lying awake, staring at star maps, and wondering what might be hiding in the moon's shadow. The gravitational data suggested something massive, patient, and perfectly synchronized with the moon's ancient dance around Earth. But the data couldn't convey the feeling that crawled under my skin every time I studied those impossible readings. The sense that something huge and intelligent was waiting out there in the void, waiting for us to finally notice it. Perhaps waiting to notice us in return. 3 days before launch, I stood alone on the observation deck, watching the moon rise above Earth's horizon. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw something else rising beside it. A second shadow, dimmer than imagination but more real than DREAMS. Tomorrow we'd find out what cast it. The launch happened before dawn. Earth shrank beneath us as the Halcyon Aere climbed toward the void on pillars of controlled fire. I watched through the observation port as our home planet grew smaller, trying to memorize its blue familiarity. Before we risked everything to confront the unknown, the journey to lunar orbit SHOULD have taken 3 days of routine acceleration and course corrections. Instead, we encountered our first anomaly just 18 hours into the flight. KIRAN, you need to see this. Monro's voice ECHOED through the command module. Tense with suppressed confusion, our navigation is showing some unusual drift patterns. I swam to his station, noticing the barely detectable tension in his shoulders. Combat pilots learned to absolutely trust their instruments, and when those instruments started lying, it shook them to their core. Define unusual, I said, studying the trajectory display. We're experiencing periodic course deviations. Small, maybe half a degree each time, but they're pulling us off our planned approach vector. He highlighted a series of navigation corrections on his screen. Every few hours, something tugs us aside. Like we're on a leash that keeps getting pulled. Sloan swam over from his science station. His radiation detection equipment hummed quietly around his workstation. I'm picking up particle decay signatures that predate the formation of our solar system, KIRAN. Whatever's generating THEM, it's been here for billions of years. The implications of those words sent ice through my veins. Something ancient was hiding in the moon's shadow. Old enough to remember the birth of WORLDS, CAS, anything from the comm arrays, I called to our linguistics specialist. She shook her head, THOUGH, her expression remained troubled. Radio silence on all frequencies. But there's something else. I've been monitoring background radiation patterns, and sometimes I catch fragments that sound almost like. She fell silent, as if unwilling to voice her suspicions. Like what? Like human voices, speaking backwards. The next 12 hours brought us into the gravitational anomaly scanning zone. Our instruments painted an impossible picture in three-dimensional space, where the moon hung in ancient splendor. The second gravitational signature occupied the exact coordinates our calculations indicated for the phantom mass. But when we directed our most advanced LiDAR ARRAYS at those coordinates, nothing reflected back. It's like shooting light into a hole in reality, Sloan muttered, adjusting his equipment for the 12th time. The gravitational math, INSISDS, something massive is there. But PHOTONS pass straight through as if it's empty space. I initiated a neutrino correlation sequence, hoping that subatomic particles might reveal what visible light couldn't. The results made my hands tremble as I reviewed the data STRAMS. There's definitely something there, I announced to the crew. The neutrino scattering patterns indicate a solid mass with lunar density characteristics, but ITs phase SHIFTED, existing in OUR gravitational field while remaining transparent to electromagnetic radiation. MONRO executed a careful orbital adjustment, moving us closer to the moon's visible surface. If we can't see this thing directly, maybe we can find evidence of its influence. Gravitational SHADOWS, tidal effects, anything that proves its existence. That's when CAS made the discovery that changed everything. Signal intercept on emergency frequencies, SHE called out, her voice suddenly urgent. ITs coming from the lunar surface. Mare Crisium region. Audio transmission is heavily distorted but definitely human in origin. She routed the signal through our main speakers, and we listened to a voice speaking in a familiar rhythm. Buried under static, Apollo Aere terminology, mission protocols, countdown sequences. But the words made no sense in the context of any lunar mission I'd ever studied. Houston, this is Eagle 20, confirming visual contact with secondary orbital structure. Repeat, we are observing auxiliary object. The blood drained from MY face. There was never an Eagle 20. The Apollo missions ENDED-AT number 17. The Apollo archives show no records of any such designation. Eagle 20, I said, pulling up historical mission data. This transmission is either a hoax or a mission that was supposed to happen but never did, MONRO demanded. Or one that did happen but was erased from history, CAS said quietly, her face pale as she studied the image. SLOAN's instruments began to chime. Urgent alert. Massive radiation spike from Mare Crisium coordinates. Something down there just activated. We adjusted our orbit for a closer look at the lunar surface. And MONRO's sharp eyes spotted IT first, metallic glint against the gray regolith. Too regular to be natural. There he pointed to the main display, grid coordinates 77 alpha. That's definitely artificial. Telescopic CAMERAS revealed a site that shouldn't exist. A lunar module, complete with landing stage and equipment packages, sitting in a crater that should contain no human artifacts. The configuration matched Apollo era technology, but the mission designation painted on its side read Apollo 20. Impossible, I whispered. Apollo 20 was canceled in 1970, budget cuts, it never flew. Then how is it sitting on the lunar surface? CAS asked quietly. MONRO maneuvered US into a closer observation orbit, sharpening the view of the abandoned lander. What we saw through the camera, FEADS DEFIED rational explanation. 3 figures in spacesuits. SAT motionless beside the lander, but their helmets were turned completely backward. So the faceplates faced away from them, not forward. Equipment malfunction, SLOAN suggested. THOUGH, his voice lacked conviction. No, CAS said, growing paler as she studied the image. Look at the position of their bodies. They're sitting in a deliberate pattern. The reversed astronauts formed a perfect triangle. Their backward-pointing helmets indicated 3 different sectors of the lunar horizon, as if they were observing something approaching from multiple directions simultaneously. Something they never wanted to see coming. The decision to investigate the abandoned lander proved more complex than any of US expected. While MONRO calculated our descent trajectory, the Halcyon Aere navigation system began displaying readings that violated every principle of orbital mechanics I'd studied in 20 years of space operations. This makes no sense, MONRO muttered, running his instrument diagnostics for the 3rd time in an hour. According to our positioning data, we're maintaining a stable lunar orbit. But our reference, STARS, shows shift pattern that suggests we're moving through space at impossible velocities. I double-checked OUR telemetry channels, hoping to find some logical explanation for the contradictory information. Instead, I discovered something far more disturbing. Look at this time-stamped divergence. Our chronometers show different rates of time flow. Mission ELAPSED time indicates we've been in lunar orbit for 6 hours. But the ship's atomic clocks show almost 14 hours have passed. SLOAN swam over from his particle monitoring station. His face was dark with concentration. This correlates with what I'm seeing on MY detection arrays, the cosmic background radiation signature. KEPS shifting, as if we're moving through a region of space with different fundamental properties. Different how? CAS asked. THOUGH, a strange quality had entered her voice, almost like an echo. Cosmic background radiation varies depending on your position relative to the expanding universe, SLOAN explained. But these variations suggest we're not just changing location, we're changing when we are. The meaning of his words hit me like a physical force. You're saying we're experiencing temporal displacement. I'm saying the math indicates no longer in lunar orbit in the present moment, SLOAN carefully replied. We might be in orbit around a gravitational echo of the moon from another point in time. MONRO attempted another course correction, but our engines seemed to fire into empty space, having no effect on our trajectory. It's like we're locked in a pattern we can't break. Every time I try to alter our orbital path, something pulls us back into the same configuration. That night, as we drifted in our impossible orbit, CAS began speaking in her sleep. Her voice carried through the HAB/SYSTEMS quiet hum, speaking words that froze my blood. Despite their familiar rhythm, NASA mission protocols, Apollo era terminology, countdown sequences, but spoken in reverse, as if someone was playing audio recordings backward. 30 minutes to sequence start, Auto SHE whispered. Eagle Houston, mission abort. Visual negative. Repeat, negative visual. I activated the intercom to wake her, but SLOAN grabbed my hand. Don't interrupt. Record everything she says. This might be our only understanding of what happened to that crew below. Over the next few hours, CAS recited fragments of lunar mission transcripts that I recognized from NASA archives, but her reverse delivery turned familiar communications into prophetic warnings. Countdown became count-up, confirmations became negations. One giant leap for mankind became mankind for leap giant one. Here, Eagle Base of Tranquility, we exchanged alarmed glances with MONRO. These were NEIL, ARMSTRONG's first words on the moon, spoken in perfect reverse chronology. SHES relaying Apollo 11 communications, I whispered. But how could she know these transcripts word for word? More importantly, MONROREPLIED, why is she speaking them backward? When CAS finally woke, she claimed no memory of her nightly declamations. But something had changed in her eyes, a certain remoteness that suggested she was seeing something beyond our ship's hull. The next day brought our most disturbing discoveries. SLOAN was monitoring particle streams from the L2 LAGRANGE point, trying to triangulate our exact position relative to the Earth-Moon system. When his instruments detected something that made HIM scream, blood poured from his eyes. As he stared at the display SCRENS, his hands shook as he tried to process what the visual sensors were showing. KIRAN, HEGASPED. You need to see this, but be careful. Don't look directly at the stream for more than a few seconds. I carefully approached his station, noticing how SLOAN's trembling fingers WIPED blood from his face. What am I looking at? The L2 visual array, maximum magnification, focused on grid coordinates, corresponding to the moon's internal structure. The image that appeared on his screen DEFIED comprehension. Through some impossible trick of physics, the sensors were seeing inside the moon itself, revealing massive hollow chambers where solid rock SHOULD be, and through these chambers, clear as daylight, MOVED, a figure in a modern spacesuit, a figure that looked exactly like me. That's impossible, I breathed. How can sensors penetrate solid lunar rock? They can't, SLOANREPLIED, still bleeding from his eyes. But look at the orientation. The figure in the spacesuit, MOVED, purposefully through the moon's internal chambers. But he was walking upside down relative to lunar gravity, his feet pointed toward the moon's core, while his helmet faced outward into space, as if he existed in an inverted gravitational field. It's not just you, SLOAN continued. His voice was growing weaker. I see MONRO in another chamber and CAS. We're all moving through the moon's interior, all walking upside down. MONRO shouted from the navigation station. His voice was tight with barely controlled panic. We have a serious problem. According to stellar navigation, we're no longer in lunar orbit. Then what are we orbiting? I demanded, based on gravitational mechanics and reference star positions. We're circling the exact spatial coordinates. where the moon formed 4.5 billion years ago. Not the orbit of the satellite itself. His words hit me like icy water. We're orbiting an event that created it. This revelation brought horrifying clarity to our situation. Somehow the gravitational anomaly hadn't just thrown US off course. It had thrown US off time, trapping US in an orbital pattern around the moment of the moon's birth, while simultaneously showing US glimpses of our own future inside the ancient satellite, or perhaps our past, reflected through the lens of cosmic forces we barely understood. In any case, we were no longer traversing normal space. We'd fallen into something far more dangerous. A gravitational trap that existed in multiple temporal dimensions simultaneously. And somewhere in the moon's impossible interior, alternative versions of ourselves WALKED, upside DOWN through chambers. That shouldn't exist, heading toward purposes we couldn't even begin to imagine. The revelation that we were orbiting the moon's creation event rather than the satellite itself left US alone with physics that had no name in any textbook. But our situation became infinitely more complex. When Halcyon Aere detected massive structural movement on the moon's far side. "Something's detaching," he announced. His eyes were still bloodied from the previous day's visual trauma. Gravitational sensors show a separation event occurring at the lunar antipode. I studied his readings, NOTING signatures that suggested an object, roughly one-third the moon's mass, was pulling away from the satellite's hidden hemisphere, detaching from what? There's nothing on the far side but impact craters and basaltic plains, according to these measurements. Something's been there the whole time, something we couldn't detect because it exists in phase shift with normal matter. Slon adjusted his instruments, trying to track the detaching mass. Now it's becoming visible through temporal interference patterns. MONRO activated our forward survey cameras, pointing them at the far side coordinates. What appeared on the main display challenged every assumption we'd held about our ancient celestial companion. The structure was indeed detaching from the moon's surface, but calling it a structure seemed inadequate. The object stretched 400s of kilometers, consisting of materials that warped light around themselves. While maintaining perfect geometric precision, it resembled a gigantic mechanical framework. All sharp angles and intersecting planes, designed according to architectural principles that hurt to look at directly. "It looks like scaffolding," CAS noted. THOUGH, her voice now carried that strange echo quality that had become more pronounced. As if the moon itself had been built around some supporting framework, the detaching construction moved with deliberate purpose, slowly rotating as it pulled free of the moon's gravitational embrace. As it turned, we saw glimpses of its internal structure, revealing chambers and corridors that seemed to stretch through multiple spatial planes simultaneously. "KIRAN, you need to see this," MONRO called from the navigation station. "This thing isn't just detaching from the moon. It's moving toward our position." The massive framework was approaching US with mathematical precision. Its trajectory was calculated to intersect our orbital path. As it drew closer, we could see that its surface was covered with DOCKING PORTS, airlock mechanisms, and what appeared to be berthing facilities designed for spacecraft. Exactly like the Halcyon Aere. It's been waiting for US, I realized with growing horror. This whole situation, our mission, getting trapped in this temporal orbit, IT was all orchestrated to bring US here. The approaching structure triggered response patterns in our ship's automated SYSTMS. DOCKING protocols activated without OUR input, guidance SYSTEMS engaged, and magnetic coupling mechanisms extended. To meet the approaching construction, as if recognizing a familiar partner, we're being pulled in, MONRO reported. His HANDS, MOVED, frantically across the controls that no longer responded to his commands. All manual overrides are disabled. The ship is treating this as a routine DOCKING procedure. Within minutes, the Halcyon Aere snuggled into a berthing cradle that fit our hull specifications perfectly. Atmospheric seals engaged with a soft hissing sound, and life support SYSTEMS reported successful hard dock. With a structure that shouldn't exist, the airlock cycling sequence initiated automatically, leaving US with a choice: remain locked in our ship or explore what lay beyond the sealed portal. We didn't come all this way to sit in OUR cabins, MONRO declared, already checking the seal integrity of his spacesuit. The interior of the structure DEFIED architectural logic. Corridors stretched in directions that seemed to bend back on themselves, while lighting fixtures cast SHADOWS at impossible angles. But the most disturbing discovery awaited US in the central chamber. The walls were lined with rows of data storage BLOCKS, each humming with active computational power. Display SCRENS showed mission parameters, crew lists, and flight trajectories for dozens of lunar expeditions. Some I recognized from NASA archives. Others depicted missions that were never approved, never flown, never existed in OUR timeline. Apollo 18 through 25, CAS read from one display panel, Mariner Deep Probe missions. Something called Project Lunar Mirror. She paused at another screen. There's even data here for missions planned for the 2030 to 2050 period, future missions that haven't happened yet. SLOAN discovered rows of communication equipment that had been receiving and storing transmissions for DECADES. Not just from Earth, but from SOURCES throughout the solar system. His analysis of the archived signals revealed something that made my hands shake. These aren't just records, he announced. These are interactive communications. Real-time conversations with crew members who are simultaneously dead, not yet born, and currently active on missions. Existing in parallel temporal states. One particular display caught my attention, showing a detailed schematic of Earth-Moon gravitational mechanics. But the diagram revealed something NASA had never detected in a century of lunar observation. The Moon wasn't a natural satellite captured by Earth's gravity during the solar system's formation. It was an artificial construction placed in a precise orbital configuration to serve as an anchor point for something buried deep in Earth's mantle. The data streams painted a horrifying picture. Some ancient intelligence HAD positioned the Moon as a gravitational lock, preventing the activation of mechanisms hidden beneath Earth's surface. The satellite SCRVED as both monitor and restraining device, keeping dormant systems from awakening and transforming our planet into something unrecognizable. But the lock mechanism required periodic RECALIBRATION. The detaching structure, the temporal displacement we were experiencing, even OUR presence here. All of IT was part of a maintenance cycle that occurred AT intervals measured in geological epochs. We're not explorers, I realized with painful certainty. We're maintenance technicians. CAS found the structure's central processing core. The device turned out to exist, partially in OUR dimension, extending into regions of spacetime we couldn't perceive. When she activated its interface SYSTEMS, the air around US shimmered with holographic displays. showing Earth from perspectives no human had ever seen. Our planet without oceans, without atmosphere, without familiar continental configurations. We saw a world of crystalline structures and geometric landscapes. That suggested artificial transformation on a planetary scale. This is what Earth becomes if the Moon's anchor effect fails. The structure's intelligence communicated through harmonics that bypassed our ears and spoke directly to our consciousness. The mechanisms beneath your world are waiting for activation signals that have been delayed for millions of years. The revelation struck us like physical blows. The Moon wasn't protecting Earth from external threats. It was protecting Earth from itself, from transformation processes that would have remade our entire planet. According to designs created by an intelligence that predated human evolution by cosmic ages. And now, after eons of patient waiting, something was summoning THOSC buried mechanisms back to life. The structure's central intelligence led us deeper into its labyrinth through passages that seemed to rearrange themselves. Based on our movement patterns, every corridor we traversed revealed new HORRORS, rows of processor blocks, containing archived data from civilizations that had faced the same choice we now confronted. This isn't just Earth records, I said, studying holographic displays showing planetary SYSTEMS across the galaxy. This mechanism has been used before, across dozens of WORLDs we can't even imagine. MONRO studied tactical data streams showing the fates of previous civilizations. Some chose transformation, OTHERS chose resistance. None chose survival in an unchanged form. The structure led us into a chamber that defied geometrical constraints of its external dimensions. The space stretched beyond sight, filled with perfectly preserved artifacts from alternative versions of human space exploration. Mission patches from expeditions that were never launched, spacecraft designs that never left drawing boards, and photographs of crew members showing faces I recognized but in unfamiliar uniforms. "Look at this," CAS called out. Her voice now carried multiple harmonic frequencies. That suggested a fundamental alteration of her vocal cords. She stood before a display case containing Apollo mission documentation, variants from Apollo 11 to Apollo 47, all successful lunar landings. Each crew reported different discoveries. The archive materials painted pictures of human space exploration, following countless divergent paths. In some timelines, we'd established permanent lunar colonies by 1975. In others, Apollo 11 had discovered artificial structures already waiting on the lunar surface. The most disturbing were the timelines where lunar missions never returned, and there, CREWSJOINED, the intelligence controlling the anchor mechanism. SLOAN approached a section containing spacesuits from various exploration attempts. "These constructions are decades ahead of our current technology," he noted, running his hands over material that seemed to shift from solid to gaseous states. "The engineering principles are completely beyond our understanding. Don't touch them directly," I warned. But my warning came too late. One of the suits reacted to SLOAN's contact, flowing around his hands like liquid mercury, before solidifying into GLOVES that perfectly matched his anatomy. He tried to pull his hands away, but the material had already bonded with his skin at a molecular level. "It doesn't hurt," he said, studying his transformed hands with scientific wonder. "In fact, I feel enhanced sensory data. Pressure variations, electromagnetic fields, gravitational fluctuations. This suit is interfacing directly with my nervous system." The transformation accelerated rapidly. The alien material flowed up his arms, across his torso, encapsulating his entire body in a second skin that pulsed with its own internal rhythms. But when it reached his head, Sloan's expression shifted from wonder to horror. "It's not just giving me enhanced senses, HEGASPED. It's downloading my memories, everything I've ever learned, every experience I've had. It's copying everything." The suit's helmet sealed around his face, and for several moments we watched through the transparent faceplate as data streams flowed across his eyes like living text. Then the download process reversed, and information began flowing back into his brain from sources we couldn't identify. "I see them," Sloan whispered. His voice now carried the same harmonic distortions that had affected CAS. "All the other versions of MARCUS SLOAN from the timeline where Apollo 20 succeeded. MARCUS SLOAN from the reality where Earth's transformation began in 1969. MARCUS SLOAN from future times where humanity becomes something completely different." The absorption of his consciousness by the suit accelerated beyond any possibility of intervention. We watched helplessly as Sloan's individual personality dissolved into a collective intelligence spanning multiple temporal dimensions. His last words before full integration carried knowledge from civilizations that had faced the same choice millennia before our species evolved. "The mechanism doesn't want to destroy us," he said, his voice becoming increasingly mechanical. "It wants to preserve us, every civilization that reaches lunar exploration triggers the same sequence. Those who accept transformation join the collective. Those who resist face consequences that make extinction seem merciful." When the absorption process completed, the suit containing what had been MARCUS Sloan WITHDREW into a niche designed specifically for his transformed form. He joined DOZENS of similar FIGURES, each representing a consciousness archived for purposes we couldn't comprehend. CAS approached the niche where SLOAN now stood motionless. "We weren't supposed to see this again," she said. Her words carried meanings that seemed to originate from multiple sources simultaneously. This knowledge was supposed to remain hidden until the activation sequence REACHED completion. I realized with painful certainty that CAS was no longer fully human. Her linguistic abilities had been enhanced by direct neural interface with the structure's database, giving her access to communication protocols used by the mechanism's creators. MONRO demanded an explanation again. "You're speaking as if this has happened before." "It has," CAS REPLIED. Her multiple voice harmonics created words in languages that predated human speech. Humanity has faced this choice at least 17 times in different temporal iterations. The mechanism preserves records of each attempt, each decision, each consequence. She pointed to a display showing Earth from perspectives that revealed its true nature. An unnatural planet that had evolved over billions of years, or rather a carefully constructed test environment, created to raise civilizations until they achieved sufficient technological development to trigger the activation protocols. Each species that achieves spaceflight discovers the moon's true purpose, CAS continued. Most choose transformation, joining the collective consciousness that maintains the mechanism across galactic distances. But some resist, believing they can preserve their original nature while still gaining cosmic knowledge. "And those civilizations?" I asked. I feared the answer. "They learn that resistance is temporary," CAS REPLIED. The mechanism is patient. It can wait geological epochs for consciousness to mature, but eventually every species makes the same choice we now face. MONRO studied the tactical data stream showing the current status of Earth's buried SYSTEMS. How much time do we have until activation completes? The transformation begins when the Moon's orbital anchor fails, CAS explained. Based on current gravitational dynamics, that failure will occur within 72 hours. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All of Earth's population faced metamorphosis into something alien within 3 days. Unless we could somehow restore the Moon's anchor function or find an alternative solution. But as I studied the archival data on previous civilizations, I realized that every species that had faced this choice had discovered the same terrible truth. The mechanism wasn't offering transformation as an option. It was implementing transformation as an inevitability, regardless of our preferences or resistance. The only question was whether we would cooperate with the process or be dragged through it against our will. And in the niche where SLOAN stood, other preserved consciousnesses waited for a consciousness that could either save our species or destroy any illusion that salvation was possible at all. The journey back to the Halcyon Aere felt like walking through a cemetery of possibilities. Every step through the structure's shifting corridors reminded us that we were leaving behind knowledge that could have reshaped human understanding of existence itself. But we were also abandoning SLOAN to the collective consciousness that had CLAIMED HIM. MONRO, MOVED with military efficiency, checking his equipment and running system diagnostics as we approached our ship's DOCKING port. We need to contact Earth immediately, he said, if we have 72 hours until planetary transformation. Mission Control needs to begin evacuation protocols. Evacuate to WHERE. I asked, THOUGH. I already suspected the futility of his proposal. If this mechanism operates on a galactic scale, there's nowhere in our solar system that would be safe. We reached the Halcyon Aere and began emergency departure procedures. THOUGH. I suspected the structure would only release us when it decided to do so. Our ship's SYSTEMS responded normally until we attempted to break the DOCKING connections. At that moment, all airlock SCALs disengaged simultaneously, without any input from our controls. It's finished with us, MONRO noted as we drifted away from the massive framework. Whatever purpose WE served here, we've fulfilled it. The return flight to Earth SHOULD have taken 18 HOURS AT maximum acceleration. Instead, we found ourselves approaching our home planet in what felt like minutes, as if space itself was compressing around us to accelerate our journey. But as Earth grew larger in our observation PORTS, I noticed something that made my blood freeze in my veins. MONRO, check the telescopic arrays. Focus on Earth's continental configurations. He activated our most powerful visual sensors and pointed them at our approaching planet. The image that appeared on the main display challenged every principle of optical physics I understood. 2 Earths hung in space before us, occupying absolutely identical coordinates while remaining distinctly separate. One showed familiar blue oceans, green land masses, and swirling cloud patterns we'd left days ago. The other displayed continents of black glass, an atmosphere torn away to expose crystalline structures. Stretching across entire hemispheres, double exposure glitch, MONRO suggested, though his tone indicated he didn't believe his own hypothesis. No, I replied, studying the sensor readings. Our instruments detect two different planetary masses. The same gravitational signature, the same orbital characteristics, but existing in parallel dimensional states. CAS approached the observation port and placed her palm against the transparent aluminum surface. Where her hand touched the barrier, the material began displaying data in SYMBOLS that hurt to look at directly. Temporal merge, SHE translated. The mechanism is forcing US to choose which version of Earth continues to exist. The original planet, or the transformed version, that represents what humanity becomes after accepting cosmic integration. The meaning struck me with devastating clarity. We weren't just witnessing the beginning of Earth's transformation. We were being forced to participate in a selection process that would determine the ultimate fate of our species. How do we choose? MONRO demanded. What criteria does the mechanism use to evaluate our decision? It doesn't matter what we choose, CAS replied. Her multiple voice frequencies created words that seemed to originate from SOURCES beyond human vocal cords. The mechanism has already determined the outcome. It's just allowing US to experience the illusion of free WILL before implementing its preferred solution. Our ship's communication systems activated without OUR input, receiving transmissions from both versions of Earth simultaneously. Signals from our familiar planet carried normal NASA mission control protocols, status update requests, and expressions of concern about our extended silence, but transmissions from the crystalline Earth. Spoken harmonics that completely bypassed our ears, communicating directly with consciousness through METHODS that made human language seem primitive and inadequate. Both versions are equally real, I realized with growing horror. The mechanism isn't showing US possible futures. It's showing US parallel presents that exist simultaneously until convergence forces them to collapse into a single timeline. MONRO attempted to establish standard communication protocols with mission control, but our radio equipment produced only static. When pointed at the familiar Earth, the crystalline version, however, immediately responded to any attempt at communication, flooding our receivers with data streams containing information about cosmic engineering projects spanning millions of years. The transformed Earth is trying to communicate with US, MONRO reported. I can't decipher the signal patterns. They're using mathematical principles that don't correspond to any system we understand. CAS approached the communication station and placed her hands on the control interfaces. Immediately, the alien transmissions resolved into concepts we could comprehend. Their understanding filled ME with existential dread that threatened to shatter MY sanity. The crystalline Earth was populated by transformed versions of humanity, beings who had accepted integration with the cosmic mechanism. Millions of years ago, they existed as pure consciousness, interacting with matter through technological mediators. That made our most advanced computers seem like primitive stone tools. They're trying to convince US that transformation represents evolution, not extinction, CAS translated. They claim biological existence is a temporary phase that conscious species must ultimately abandon to participate in galactic civilization. And if we refuse, I asked, then we remain trapped in biological limitations until natural entropy eventually destroys our species anyway. The mechanism simply accelerates the inevitable process, offering immortality as compensation. Through the observation PORTS, I watched as both versions of Earth rotated in perfect synchronization. Their day and night CYCLES coincided exactly, despite representing radically different evolutionary paths. But as we approached, I noticed that the gravitational anchor effect provided by the moon was fluctuating with increasing frequency. The moon's stabilizing influence is breaking down, I noted, studying our gravitational field sensors. Whatever system was keeping these parallel timelines separated, it's beginning to fail. MONRO checked our orbital mechanics calculations. Based on the current rate of decay, the parallel Earth states will collapse into a single timeline within 12 HOURS. When that happens, one version survives while the other ceases to exist. The weight of cosmic responsibility settled on MY's shoulders like a physical burden. Somehow our presence here, our interaction with the mechanism, HAD triggered the final phase of a selection process that would determine not only humanity's future, but whether our species would continue to exist in any recognizable form at all. And as I watched the two Earths rotating before us, I realized that the choice we faced was no choice at all. The mechanism had been guiding human development for millennia, steering our technological progress toward this exact moment, when we'd be forced to confront the price of cosmic knowledge. The only remaining question was whether we'd accept that price voluntarily or resist to the very end. The weight of inevitability pressed down on us as the two Earths rotated. Their fates were INTRWOVN. But separated by forces beyond our comprehension, MONRO's gaze was steady. His mind raced through every tactical protocol he knew, in search of an escape from the cosmic trap tightening around us. KIRAN, we have to make a choice, he said. His voice was quiet but steel ran through it. We can't just wait for the mechanism to decide for us. I nodded, THOUGH, every instinct screeched caution. But what choice? The mechanism controls all the options. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about what we become. CAS stood at the communication station. Her fingers danced across the control panels with unnatural grace. Her EYES GLOWED slightly, reflecting the impossible knowledge SHE now contained. The final binding scheme is here, SHE murmured. To break the connection or accept it. The ship hummed quietly as we prepared for the final ACT. It was like stepping through a threshold from understanding to oblivion. The DOCKING PORTS BIRTHED and the Halcyon Aere drifted freely in the void between the two realities. I'm engaging full thermal nuclear drive power, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. If we can disrupt the connection where it anchors to the moon, we might be able to free Earth from this cosmic prison. MONRO looked at me, deep trouble reflected in his face. If you do this, there's a chance you won't come back. A silence hung in the cabin before I responded. Then I'll make sure you and CAS get back safely. It's the only way. Strapping into the pilot's chair, I configured the systems to redirect all power into the thermal nuclear core. The engine glow intensified, casting eerie light throughout the cabin. As we approached the moon's far side again, I felt the weight of what awaited us. The binding point glimmered in phase SHIFTED light, a slender intersection of spacetime threads. Binding the realities together, the thermal nuclear charge had to be precise. We weren't dealing with simple physical force, but with the weaving of dimensions. Launch in 3, 2, 1, I whispered. My hands were steady on the controls. A wave of energy passed through the ship as the thermal nuclear explosion released. Its radiant pulse struck the strange construction orbiting the moon. The connection resisted annihilation, pulling at every fiber of the Halcyon Aere. Time itself seemed to stretch and contract. The dual EARTHS trembled. Their IMAGES flickered in the viewports like fragile memories. Then silence. The construction collapsed in ON itself. Its geometry fell apart in a cascade of temporal echoes. ALARMS screamed throughout the ship as systems struggled to recalibrate. I was battered but conscious. Status report, MONRO's voice crackled through the communicators. The binding point is destabilized, I replied in a raspy voice. The connection between realities is broken. Earth SHOULD stabilize, but I looked back at the viewport. One Earth remained. The other had disappeared like a dream dissolving at dawn. But I'm still here, I murmured. Trapped, an echo in the void where time no longer flows as it, SHOULD. Feeling my isolation, CAS voice softened on the line. You broke the lock, KIRAN. But your fate is now entangled with the mechanism. Your presence lingers between realities. MONRO's voice was heavy. We're heading home, and we'll keep searching for you. As the Halcyon turned toward Earth, I remained behind in liminal space, alone but victorious. The price was high. The cosmos had demanded its payment. Above the planet's SKIES, the secondary shadows still flickered for a moment. Watching, waiting, and I knew deep in my bones that this wasn't the end. The mechanism had survived, and I had to survive too. The stars around me twinkled strangely. It seemed the universe was breathing, alive, full of mysteries too vast for the human mind. I looked out the viewport, but instead of familiar constellations, abstract patterns danced in impossible geometries. Time itself was a river being torn apart and folding back in itself. I was lost in the currents, a lone figure suspended beyond normal existence. I thought of Earth, of MONRO and CAS racing home, their lives returning to normalcy. I had sacrificed my mind, wandering through memories. Laughter in briefing ROOMS, the tension of first contact. SLOAN's transformation, CAS cryptic warnings. Would they understand what I'd done? Would the world I saved ever know the price paid? A flicker of movement caught my eye. Far beyond the remains of the destroyed construction, a form coalesced, a presence watching through the cosmic veil. It was neither hostile nor friendly, simply observing, a guardian or warden. I felt a whisper in my mind. Not words, but impressions, warnings, promises, fates intertwined across the vast canvas of reality. My sacrifice had bought Earth a chance to prosper, but the cosmic mechanism, ancient as the stars themselves, was patient. For every broken lock there would be another key. I was no longer KIRAN Holt, the scientist. I was KIRAN Holt, the watchman, caught between WORLDS, keeper of SCCRETS that no one was meant to hold. And somewhere in that unbearable silence, I swore to watch, to wait, and to guard humanity from the SHADOWS still hiding beyond the light. DAYSPASSED in this timeless limbo, without the flow of normal time. Memories stretched and wore thin. Like threads pulled too tight, I fell into strange rhythms, neither sleep nor wakefulness, but a state suspended between the two. Sometimes I caught fragments of the mechanism's ancient song, a harmonic resonance that echoed across the dimension. These were melodies and warnings intertwined. A lattice of sound that held SCCRETS of creation and destruction. Sometimes I felt the presence of the observer again, twinkling like a distant star in the blackness. It never approached but never departed, an eternal watchman like myself, or perhaps the architect of this cosmic trial. I used the ship's degraded systems to send weak pulses toward Earth with periodic data bursts. Encoded messages for MONRO and CAS. I hoped against hope that my signal would pierce the veil and they would find me. Night, If the concept of night still applied here, I imagined Earth's skies, wind on my face. The voices of billions unaware of the cosmic battle raging above them. And despite the loneliness, the creeping isolation, I understood one inescapable truth. Some things survive beyond the stars. Some truths live longer than time. And what I had set in motion was only the beginning of humanity's terrifying journey into the cosmos. The unknown stretches infinitely ahead, an ocean of darkness and possibility. It is simultaneously a prison and a promise, and I, the lone witness to cosmic balance, will carry this burden to the end of time.